So welcome everybody. This is our bug user group meeting, and so we want to warmly welcome Sam Enmark here from Clearing Corporation. It's November 15th, and so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, and he's going to share a little bit about Clearing and some of the projects that are going on, some career opportunities, and then get into our Bluebeam topic. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sam, and you can share a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Well, Christy, thank you for having me, and thank you all for calling in. I think the turnout at 7 o'clock is awesome. So thank you all for being here. It's excited. I'm excited that you guys are excited about Bluebeam because it's a program that I love and I use on a daily basis. So I say kudos to all of you for joining in. Yeah, I guess I'll start with an introduction of myself. My name's Sam Enmark. I was born and raised in Fresno. I usually don't like to lead on this on a Fresno State user group, but I did not go to Fresno State. I got out of Fresno for a few years, went over to the coast, and then kind of did a return to sender and came back to Fresno. I've been with Clearing General now for 5.5 years. Yeah. I started out as a project engineer and have kind of worked my way up to I'm now a project manager. Here, done mostly jobs in town, focus really more on the medical side of things. And I'm out at Valley Children's Hospital. We're doing an admin building for them, along with a lot of other projects on the campus, including infrastructure, work inside the hospital. So it's kind of, we're got a lot going on out here and kind of a lot going on across the company too. So it's all very exciting. I'd say kind of just a little bit about Clearing. If you guys don't know, we are a commercial general contractor, relatively mid-sized. I'd say we're kind of one of the bigger ones in the Fresno area, but not going to be one of your Turners, Skanskas, McCarthy's, Clarks. We're not quite at that level yet, but kind of really focused on what we feel like we do well, and that kind of is the medical, affordable housing. So kind of that fills out our job list that we've really got right now. We've got a couple of ASCs, which are ambulatory surgery centers, here in town, a couple of affordable housing projects. We've got some apartments that we're doing in Hanford. Carrie can probably speak more to this, but there's behavioral health that we've got going down in Bakersfield. Yep. We've got work at the Well, which is a church here locally. And then all of the BCH jobs that I was talking about. And then Crossroads, I know, is coming up. And then, Carrie, you want to kind of, I guess I'll pass it on to you to introduce and kind of fill in a little bit maybe more about what we're doing down in Bakersfield.
Yeah, Bakersfield, we're definitely branching out into a little bit more public. I'm currently working on a mental behavioral health facility for the county down here in Kern. I have a little bit more of the special background. I just finished an animal shelter for the city of Fresno as well. So we have been doing a lot more, I would say right now, medical is a lot of our backlog, but we definitely do a lot of commercial build to suits, as well as multifamily, assisted living, affordable housing. What also Sam was kind of saying, we generally are Central Valley based, but we also have a second office in the Bay Area. As of, I think, maybe about 4 years ago, we started that. They're doing really good. We're up there. We're making a good name for ourselves out there. We're doing the same kind of thing. We're doing medical. We're doing multifamily, affordable housing, all that kind of stuff up there. So definitely the company has been growing a lot over the past 10 years. I've been with Clearing on, I think, almost 8 years now. So I actually did the opposite of what Sam did. See, I'm from the Central Coast, and then I came to Fresno, but I didn't boomerang back, not yet. So
not yet.
But yeah, I've been all over California building and stuff like that. You know, started out with like a Hitzel Phelps and went to a smaller firm after that and stuff like that too. So we're definitely, I mean, we're all kind of blessed here to have Sam kind of leading this. He does a lot of our Bluebeam trainings in-house as well. So he is what I call the Mecca user of our of our Bluebeam.
I call myself the Bluebeam Kirk. Carrie.
Oh,
So,
Bluebeam Kirk. Okay, so that says a lot. So Kirk is like our financial wizard, as I like to call him in our office. So he runs one of our accounting softwares. Basically, he is our go-to main brilliant man in our accounting side of that. So if Sam's the equivalent of that on the Bluebeam side, then yeah, we're in good hands. So.
And Sam, didn't you go to XCon too? So you saw some of these guys
Yeah.
here.
I did, yes, and I will say congratulations, you guys did. I mean, it's awesome. It was really cool to see, I guess, the level of this Bluebeam user group and see it be recognized. So congratulations to everybody that was involved.
Very proud.
Oh, thanks, Sam. We couldn't have done it without you guys too.
Oh yeah, so
You guys do all the work.
Yeah.
yeah, no, they really do. Yeah, it's a really cool.
We're just up here to kind of
constantly amazed.
So no.
Yeah.
I'm constantly amazed at how cool this program is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and it's only
very
going to
cool.
grow. We've been growing like leaps and bounds, so
It's good.
for sure.
We're happy. I
So-
think, yeah.
So Sam or Carrie, either way, can you tell us a little bit about some of the career opportunities? You know, if someone would like to come work for Queering, and you know,
Sure.
just some opinions you have and suggestions, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You want to go for it, Sam, or?
Carrie, I'll defer if you
You need to defer?
ready.
Oh, great. Okay. No, I'm kidding. No, absolutely. I know I heard some people, most of you are, it's like junior level, senior level, like we already mentioned. I think Kit already interviewed and actually got some papers signed a couple of weeks ago. There are opportunities. So like we were saying, our backlog for the next handful of years definitely is a lot of growth. And we definitely, I don't know if any of you have come to I think a handful of you have come to our company presentation earlier, I think about a month or two ago. We definitely have room for, field engineers and project engineers coming on board in the spring or actual graduation. But also internship opportunities for those of you that are not quite graduating yet. Those are still available as well. So I know I've been approached. I usually have one on my job. So if anybody wants to come to Bakersfield, you're more than welcome to. But but that goes the same for our Bay Area office too. So I know like Matt, I know you're from Petaluma. I think we've talked before. We have a job that's like a block away from your dad's office or something, your house or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That job is in kind of a interesting state at the moment. So there's some legal things they're going through with some easements. So it'll probably still be going next year. Unfortunately, not by choice. So there's probably
I don't want to get into that anyway. So
okay, well there you go. So but yeah, I'm saying so there definitely is internship opportunities as well. So I think those of you who haven't already sent me resumes, welcome to, but always a good source is going to queering.com, to our website. There is a job opportunities postings, and I think you can apply there too. And they're definitely, I definitely know that when they see some of the groups and Fresno State students and stuff, they come out, talk to like Sam and Garrett and myself if we like have a connection to you guys. So usually works out in your favor. In some respect. So at least an interview or something. So but yeah, so there's definitely opportunities and we're looking. So we hire a lot for fit. So we don't hire just for body count. So it's important to us. So it's worked out so far. So yeah, that's it. If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them our way. But yeah. Definitely.
No, and I'd say I'd say big picture. Obviously, Carrie, you did the whole spiel about Queering, and obviously, I think that it's a great company to work for, and I'd love it if every single one of you could come and work for us. But even if it's not with Queering, I'd still encourage you guys, if you're at a sophomore, junior level internship opportunities, get out there. Whatever company it may be with, kind of just seize the opportunity and learn as much as you can. Because Christy, plug your ears, but you learn as much in the 3 months on your internship as you do the rest of the year. It's kind of how I feel. It's really getting out in the field, getting on a job site is
it paints a different picture, right?
Unless you're in my classes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Unless you join this group, right?
Yes, unless you join this group.
Yeah, no,
It's good to get the hands-on experience. Sam's absolutely right.
Yes.
You learn a lot.
Yeah.
So for sure. So yeah,
So,
cool. That's it. That's our
Okay,
plug.
Sam. Yeah, so do you want to maybe describe a little bit about what's going on, maybe in more depth at Valley Children's, and segue maybe into the Bluebeam stuff?
yeah, so out at Valley Children's, we've got 1, 2, 3, 3 projects currently going on in some way, shape, or form, and we've got another kind of 4
2,
jobs
right?
right now
Okay.
in pre-construction.
Yeah.
2, we're still closing one out. I'm counting it.
Okay. All right.
Well, actually, we've got. Sorry, if we're counting the one closing out, we've got 4.
Yeah.
So we've got the big one right now, which is we're calling Founders Plaza, which is an admin building out on the kind of corner of Valley Children's and Pack Boulevard. And actually, while we're
You
doing
can't
this,
miss it. It's right at the stoplight when you're turning in. It's that
Yeah,
brand new,
I'm gonna do
beautiful
this
building. So
a little bit on the fly here. If you give me
Mhm.
just a second, I can kind of show some pictures or kind of walkthrough of the
And
project.
is Valley
real quick.
Children's the biggest project you guys have going right now, or you have other projects about the same size?
It's probably close. I would
I would
they're
say right
the
now
bay-
that's in production in terms of scale. It's probably on the bigger side just because there's multiple projects and phases going on at once out there. So we have, like what Sam was saying, Founders Plaza, but we have a whole infrastructure upgrade that we're doing to like pretty much the whole entire campus out there, which is all new utility lines and everything like that, as well as we're doing the main entry landscape remodel, which is not just planting new plants, like it's a huge landscape redesign. So
yeah, we call it our landscape job, but everybody that works on it,
which
kind
this
of
is like
second guesses it
phase
after they get
4
started.
or something like that out of the landscape. So we've already done their whole
It's phase-
backside. Yeah. So
Yeah, yep.
which is
So,
gorgeous, by
seeing
the
my-
way. So
Yeah, you guys seeing my screen right now?
yeah,
Which one? What are you seeing?
we see your poster, your flyer. There you go.
Okay, see this now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Founders Plaza building that we're doing out there. So you can thank Jaime. Actually, this right here is Jaime. So this is so it's an admin building for them. So the goal with Valley Children's and what they're trying to do is, if you guys have heard of OSHPD or HCI, it's a hospital regulatory agency, which makes hospital square footage extremely expensive. So what they're trying to do is move as much of their non-patient care services out of the main hospital and kind of consolidate them all into this building. So this building will serve HR, finance, marketing, contracting, rev cycle, and kind of offer a space for them to also host their guilds, which is their fundraising opportunity. So yeah, so that's this building. And then like Carrie was saying, we're also doing all of the infrastructure out here. So improvements of all of the roads and landscape areas around this project and throughout the hospital. And then the front yard project, which is a very, very cool landscape job in the front, and it'll be a really cool main entrance to the hospital. So that is kind of the gist of what we've got going on out here. You can kind of see it from the backside. Looking at it, it's a pretty cool looking building, I think, anyway.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is. So Valley Children's is probably one of our biggest clients right now. We've been doing a lot of their satellite facilities. There's one down here in Bakersfield. There was another one in Madera or Modesto. Yeah.
Modesto,
yeah. So they're beautiful facilities. They do a really nice job of their designs and stuff like that. And so we partner a lot with them for design builds.
This was a full design build project. Yeah.
Did you guys have any problems with like glazing or anything getting that, or any supply chain issues?
Yes, on supply chain issues, not in this case with the glazing. So I'd say our biggest hiccups Yeah, our biggest hiccups have been electrical and electrical components, and then our elevator.
And for a while there, it was our
So-
metal decking on this facility as well. That was, that stuff was very hard to come on by during, because that happened during COVID, if I remember right. Yeah, the shortage.
Yeah,
was really
yeah,
rough for
that's
that.
true, Carrie. I've completely blocked that out of my mind. I'm so into the electrical components, and
So yeah,
but yeah, the metal decking, which is usually a 6 to 8 week lead time after submittal approval, was 7 months for us.
so
Wow.
I'd say
We kind of
yeah. Electrical is
We
probably
knew
one of
that's
the
going in.
biggest shortages right now that we are seeing. Circuit breakers,
Switchgear.
panels, anything of that kind of normal stuff that you normally get off the shelves instantly is really hard to come by now. So
generators.
And why
Or-
is that? Why do you think that is? What's
We're
causing the
seeing-
delay?
We're seeing certain components
yeah,
in these electrical, especially, I mean, on our elevator, I can tell you there was one specific component that they needed that was, I mean, it was almost impossible for them to get, and they're not getting them in the quantities that they need, so production slows down, and it's all coming from, theirs was coming from China, their electrical component that they needed. So it's just it's not everything. It's certain select items that they're really struggling to get, and that's kind of impacting everything.
like they can get panels, like enclosures, but they can't actually get the guts for the inside of them now. It's those components, if you have a job that's longer than 6 or 8 months, you almost have to order all of those parts about 6 months before you even start now. So it's gotten to the point where some of this stuff I'm waiting right now. My job will be done down here theoretically, and we'll be sitting waiting for our emergency generators because they went from about an 8-month lead time to a 16-month lead time within the matter of a week. So it's just the way things are now right now. So, and it probably won't be that way for the next few years. So yeah. It's hard to order materials on a project that you haven't fully designed yet. But but you have to almost lock yourself in. So our team is, we're spending more time in pre-con trying to get like material agreements in place with our suppliers and things like that, so we can secure things in timely manners and, with our clients as best as possible. Which I know you're learning a lot about that right now, Sam, aren't you? So, yeah. But it's just kind of the way of the world at the moment.
That's just a crazy way to build. I have to make a comment about that. You know what I mean?
Well, it becomes very difficult, especially when you have projects for, like Sam was saying, OSHPOD, right? So they're in the OSHPOD world, they have certain products that come with things called OPMs, which are like a certified OSHPOD product that you can use. It's been tested, like I'm going to say HVAC equipment. They've been tested on shakers for seismic, and it's the attachments and everything like that. So you can really only use that specific series of products. So when you have a product or a project where they need to remodel a surgical room and add an AC unit or something of that sort that feeds to that room, and it needs to be done in a very short amount of time because a lot of those hospital jobs don't have a lot of time to do these things. If it needs to be done in 2 months and that piece of equipment is 6 months lead out, they're stuck because they have to get to that new regulatory standard for that surgical room that might have already been delayed, and they had to get through the OSHPOD permitting process, which takes long. So it's a very difficult thing to do, especially in the hospital world. So there's some hard lessons that are being learned right now by some of the hospital staff, trying to do some of their remodel projects to get up to compliance because of that. So there's been a few where we just physically just cannot get material, so they either delay it or they get a variance or something of that sort. So sorry.
I would say more and more our design is being driven by schedule, probably more so than it ever has been before. Sometimes there's not an option. It's what is available, and that's what we're going to design to. So,
So,
but You're right, Christy. It is crazy.
Which is
crazy
funny
world we're
because
living
it's
in right now.
available at that time, but you never actually know. Because unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, everyone's heard about all the inflation, right? So what might cost $1 today might cost $20 tomorrow at a drop of a hat by a vendor. So I would say on my job specifically, we were building around a VRF system through Mitsubishi, and unless your product was on a truck coming that day, all your material went up 15%. So trying to explain that to a client as you're in the permitting process, saying, hey, we either try and change the product to try and save you $500,000, or you pay the $500,000, you know, but trying to figure out what that means in terms of time too. So in your design, because now you have to change to a new product. So, and then lock in that material as well. So it just, and they're, all these vendors are being surprised by their own suppliers too. So it's kind of an odd little game going on right now. So, yeah, we do the best we can.
Yes, we do.
There's always a win. We can find it somewhere. So, yes.
Yep. So, all right. Anything else? I mean, querying wise, any other questions from anybody on kind of who we are, what we do? Any questions on kind of what we've been talking about, schedule, or what we've been seeing material procurement wise?
No. All right.
I think we're
Okay.
good, Sam.
Let's go for it, Sam.
All right.
Let's go, Guru.
Get into the fun. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get into the fun stuff then. All of that's nightmare fuel right now.
Yeah. That's some good news.
Yeah. So anyway, so we'll get into the Bluebeam. Hopefully you guys are seeing my screen. The kind of, and forgive me if you guys are looking at my camera and it looks like I'm not looking at you. I've got 3 screens going here, and my computer has my camera, but I'm looking at the big screen. So forgive me for not looking directly at the camera. But yeah, so we'll kind of go through, and the topics that we've discussed or we've talked about and that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be OCR, and then tools kind of for a good quantity takeoff. And I want to caveat this before we start and say that I am not currently an estimator. So I wish that Garrett were on the phone to kind of, I can go through all of the Bluebeam stuff, and I've got we can discuss how that gets used in the big picture as far as an estimate goes. And feel free to ask me questions. And if there's something I don't know, I'm going to punt and email Garrett and we can get some answers because he is our estimating guru. So yeah, so anyway, those are kind of the topics we'll talk about. And I guess without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get rolling into it. So OCR is, I think, one of the cooler features that Bluebeam offers. And kind of big picture, how I look at OCR is if you've got a document that you cannot search or it doesn't recognize words or images in it, OCR is a tool that Bluebeam offers that will kind of look at the PDF, go through and identify different symbols, words, letters, so that the document does become searchable. And I guess the best way, first off, to tell if a document is searchable is to first search it. So what I always do when I get a document, and this is a PDF that I'm going to use as kind of a case in point, is I'm going to go to this and I just hit Control F for search. And I'm going to search, and I always just try to find a word that I see in there. So this word vector here, I'm going to search for the word vector, and it shows me 0 results, which means that this is not a PDF that is searchable, right? So I guess that kind of begs the question is, what kind of PDFs are searchable? Which kind of PDFs are not searchable? And that's the kind of difference here, is a raster image versus vector graphics. So if a PDF comes in as a raster or bitmap graphic, it's not going to be searchable. And a raster, a lot of times, kind of how I like to think of this is if it's seen the light of day, if a piece of paper has seen the light of day and it's been scanned in, your scanner takes that PDF or that piece of paper and it takes a bunch of microscopic pictures or pixels that it gets and it puts them all together and it puts them onto a PDF. That would not necessarily be searchable coming in if something has been scanned in, or that's really most of the times when we find it is when someone scans us something or a set of specs has been scanned, it comes in, we're not able to search anything, and it might as well be a piece of paper to us. The opposite of that, I guess, would be vector graphics. And vector graphics, you're going to find most of the time exported from any of the design softwares. So if the document that you're looking at has never seen the light of day, so if your architect exported something from Revit or AutoCAD directly to a PDF, a lot of times that will come out as a vector graphic. So that's not going to be pixelated. You could zoom in as far as you wanted and you're never going to see those pixels. Whereas on an image like this, that's a raster image, the more you zoom in, the more pixelated it's going to get. So all of that is kind of a long spiel, but basically those are kind of the two different PDF types that you're going to get. So if you do have a PDF that is raster, what you can do is you can go into the tools here, and I'm using Bluebeam 20 here. You can go to batch. You can go to OCR down here. Okay, there's a bunch of different settings and dialog boxes that you can click on. I typically will keep just the standard settings that it has, unless I need something very specific, but I would say like 95% of the time, this is all going to be okay. And then I hit OK. It's going to take a second to run the OCR. Obviously, the bigger document that you have, the longer this will take. This is a relatively small one, so once it gets started, it's going to go fairly quickly. So it's done that. If you notice, it's now saved. It's got a modification to it, even though we didn't change really anything. So if you OCR something, you'll want to make sure that you do a control save on that. Otherwise, the OCR will go away if you close the file. So now, if I come back up here to the search bar and search vector, I'm now finding those vectors. So this is a very small PDF here, but if you have a set of specs that is 1,000 pages long that has been scanned in and sent to you, being able to search is pivotal. You know, you're not going to reinvent the wheel every time you go in there looking for a certain word or something, right? You can just come up here to control find and find and search for whatever you're looking for, and it'll bring up all of the instances that it shows up in that PDF. And that's, I mean, that is pretty much the gist of the OCR function on here. It kind of, like I say, if you want to test to see whether something has been recognizable or not, you just search it, and if you can identify a word, search that word, and if it brings it up, you know that it is recognizable, and if it doesn't, then you're going to have to OCR the document.
Sam, there was a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. What's the question?
Can you please show again how you got the OCR option in Bluebeam?
Yeah, so, and let me caveat with, I don't think that all versions of Bluebeam offer OCR. And don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that I've got the extreme version. And I think if you have I've got Bluebeam Review Extreme. I think if you've got the just Bluebeam Review, I don't think it offers the OCR function. So that if you're getting lost on that may be why. But how I did this is I came in here to batch and then OCR and then ran it from there.
And Sam, I think that our licensing is always the newest license, so we should have Extreme. So if you students, if you have not updated your license and you can't see the OCR, it could be why.
Okay,
It-
it looks like,
Ninod got
That
it, it
answered
looks
it.
like, yeah.
I was gonna say, this is also helpful. So when you have the OCR option, like the control find, you can actually search by image as well. Like if you want to find an instance where there's fire extinguishers or something like that, it's like an image on your plans. You should be able to search that way through the OCR too, right, Sam?
yeah, thanks for ruining that for me later.
You're
Gary.
okay. I'm sorry. I take it all back. I thought you were done.
Spoiler
Yeah, that's
alert.
fine.
Yeah, no, that will
Your
make
mouse.
everything searchable.
Yeah.
And that's part of kind of if you wanted to use that as a quantity takeoff tool, you could search and use that in your quantity takeoff. So
I like
yeah,
to
you can,
foreshadow a
like,
little bit. So here you go.
yeah, no, that's good. It's almost like we worked it out, Carrie. No, so if you go up here to the search bar, if you're seeing this, the item to the left is for text, and then the item to the right is a visual search. So you can do this, get rectangle, and then search a specific. This would be an image, or if, like in Carrie's instance, a fire extinguisher, and you can search it, and it should show all the different versions of that. So I know this is text, but it also works for visuals. So
I would say
all right,
also
any other
it
questions?
is, I know you mentioned it, Sam, but it is notable that the larger set of documents that you have, the OCR can take quite a long time to go through. So if you have a plan set that's 200 pages or something that might have been scanned to you, or like 1,000-page spec, like you mentioned, it can take quite a while for it to go through and render all of that to a vector. So just keep that in mind. So I've done it before and it can take hours. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Awesome. Does that cover OCR kind of as we need it? It's a powerful tool, but I think once you kind of get the hang of it, it's relatively simple, and it's just identifying kind of what kind of file you have before you do it.
Yes, I think that covers it, Sam.
Awesome. All right. Then with that, we'll get into the next part, which is going to be quantity takeoffs, our tools for creating a good quantity takeoff. So I'm going to switch over here to my drawing set. This is the architectural finish plans for Founders Plaza. So before I get into any of the actual takeoff part of it, I want to take a second to make sure that we're kind of all set up the same, or at least you guys understand how I have my Bluebeam set up, because there's going to be some settings and things that I'm changing throughout here, and it may not appear in the same spot on your screen. So if you go up to review, go to profiles. I'm currently going out of the review advanced, which should look pretty much like this for most everybody as far as where the tool sets are set up. So hopefully your screen kind of looks similar, or you can kind of navigate along with me to find where certain buttons are on your individual screens. If you're following along, if you're just listening and kind of following along with me, that's great too. So I'd say the biggest part about doing a good quantity takeoff that's going to provide you useful information that you can then transfer into an estimate, or really kind of wherever you need to use that information, is making sure that before you dig in and dive into this, that you're setting up your quantity takeoff correctly, right? You want to make sure that you've got, for me, what I always go down here and look at is make sure that I've got my markups list in a state of what I want. So in order to edit your markups list down here, so how I have it set up is I've got, when I make a markup, it's going to show me the page label. So show me which page it was on, show the subject of whatever markup I put, show the measurement of whatever it is. So if I'm doing a lineal footage, it'll give me the lineal foot measurement. If I'm doing a square footage, it'll give me a square foot measurement. And then the label, so if there's anything specific about that, that kind of gets called out. Everybody could be doing this a little bit differently. I find that this kind of gives me the gist of the information that I need. There's a lot of other columns that you could have marked on here that can provide you everything from the color of the markup that you put, to the volume, to kind of whatever it is. So how you adjust these columns on here is if you go to markup lists, which should be popping up kind of right here in the top left of the drop down, go here to columns, and then drop down here to the manage columns. And this will show up a little bit different on your screen because I've got these ones already selected, but you can go through select page label, subject, measurement, unit, and then label. And then any other ones that you may want can go in there. So that's how I kind of have these set up, so that all of the information that I get when I start to do my quantity takeoff can be exported and can be used once I get it outside of Bluebeam. So with that, if there's no questions on kind of setup of the markups list, I'm going to start going through kind of how we do some of these quantity takeoffs. And the first kind of most important part is making sure that your pages are calibrated. So in order to do that, there's a few different ways that you can calibrate a sheet in Bluebeam. The first is going to be obviously the architectural scale, if they list that. So you can zoom in, see, okay, this page is going to be 1/8 inch to a foot. So I'm going to come up here to this calibrate tool right there. I'm going to, excuse me, I'm not going to go to the calibrate tool. I'm going to come over here to my settings, to measurements. And instead of hitting calibrate, I'm just going to select from the drop down 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. All right, and then I can come in, and I always, a kind of a trick of the trade that I've learned is always check your scale before you move on to anything, even if you do set it. And I always, so if you look at this sheet, there's really not too many dimensions on it. It's an architectural finish plan, doesn't really have anything. So what I always go off of is something that I know, and I know that this door is 3 foot, right? You'll find a lot of times most of your doors are going to be 3 foot. Some of them may be a little bit off, so make sure that you're not getting too far out there. But so I'll go here, and this should scale out right at 3 foot, right? So I know that I'm good calibration wise with 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. Okay, so that's one way to calibrate the sheet. The other way is going to be by selecting a dimension that you know. And again, this would be an awful sheet to do this by selecting a dimension that you know, because there's no dimensions on it. But just to show you how this would be done is I know that the dimension between D and E, grid line D and E, is 30 foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the calibrate tool. It's going to have me pick 2 different spots, and you want to make sure that this line is at 90 degrees. Select that, and then it's going to say kind of how this reads will be, it took a measurement on the sheet of 3.75 inches. So you're going to say that that 3.75 inches is 30 feet, and then apply the scale. And then again, I'm going to want to make sure that this door down here is 3 foot. And it is. So with that, I now know that this sheet, and this is going to be where I'm spending most of my time here, is on this sheet, is calibrated. So all of the measurements that I take on this sheet are going to be good. The worst thing that can happen is you forget to calibrate, or you calibrate it to the wrong scale, and you spend an hour doing a quantity takeoff on something, and the measurements that you get are completely wasted or no good because all of the the work that you did was in the wrong scale. And I would also say that confirming the architect scale is important. I had this on this project. Our civil scale should have been 40 feet. It was listed as 80 foot, 1 inch equals 80 foot, and it should have been 40 foot. So everything that I did there based off of the 80-foot scale was wrong when I did my takeoff, because the architect or the civil engineer had the wrong scale on their drawings. So double checking based off of a dimension that you know is always good.
Can I throw in a hint there too, Sam? Do you mind?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, I got two more for you. One, be careful if you do set scale to not apply scale to all pages. Not every drawing has the exact same scale size. So architecturals this sheet might be 1/8 of an inch to a foot, but when you get to the details, some of the details might be 1/4 inch to a foot or something of that sort. So be careful about applying that to every page of your document. They're not always the same scale. And then also be wary of scaling your documents, in the sense that there are notes usually on the plans that says do not scale, confirm with architect or engineer for dimensioning. So you can use it as a reference, but don't necessarily make it something that you do all the time. You know what I mean? It's a good tool to have, definitely for takeoffs and things of that nature, but in your production side, usually there are some notes against you being able to just scale and do what you want. You have to confirm that with your design team. So those are my two little caveats of helpful hints.
Yep. Yeah. I would say, yeah, just to build off that, Carrie, in order to do a quantity takeoff, you're gonna have to scale these drawings and do that. However, if you're ever a field engineer or you see a superintendent out in the field laying something out after they've scaled a drawing, raise your hand, because that's not how it should be done. You know, there should be dimensions on the drawings that you can do the math in order to figure out exactly where this wall lays out. And
keyword
should
be dimensions.
Yes. Sometimes it's exhausting, because I could tell you within a couple seconds how far this wall is from this wall.
Yes.
You know, but if you don't lay it out off of the dimensioned drawings, which is going to probably have you do math from here all the way to this wall and back to get to a certain wall, you're going to be, you open yourself up for some issues down the road if something isn't laid out correctly because you scaled it instead of reading the architect's dimensions.
Now, if the architect is missing dimensions, it's helpful to them to send it like what dimensions you're scaling and say, please confirm these are correct, you know, an RFI or something of that sort. So it is a very helpful tool, because all they have to do is just look at what you got and go, oh yeah, you're right, it's good. You know, so definitely a difference between estimating and production in terms of how you use scale. So it's a good note to know, depending on your position.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So with that, I'm going to do a quick run through of all of the different tool options that we've got. Once the drawing has been scaled, you've got your length tool, which is going to be your standard spot to spot. This is 9 foot 2 1/4 between. You've got your poly length tool, which is going to be useful, and we'll use this one a little later to get, if you want to get multiple dimensions. Like, I want to know how many feet of base is coming around this room. So I go spot to spot, and then when I get done, I don't necessarily have to close it. I can just hit enter, and it will do a kind of polyline there. You've got your area. So your area you can do in two different ways. You can do a square real quick by clicking and dragging, or you can do a odd shape by clicking once, clicking again, and so on. You get whatever shape you want. The perimeter is going to be, I think this is the one that you have to close. So you would close that and get the perimeter of the space. Diameter, this is, you can draw a circle at a specific diameter or take a measurement at a diameter. You can measure the angle of a wall if you needed to. Most of these are going to be 90 degrees, but you can come and get that, and that's 89.12, which means I probably just clicked off somewhere, but that's the angle tool. Radius, very similar to diameter, but is going to be just the radius of it. So if you're taking a measurement that way. Volume. So volume, one of the important parts about volume is they need to know depth of volume. So if you come over here to your settings, you can see this depth here. So if it's 0, your volume is going to be 0. But if you change this to like a 2-foot depth and then treat it similar to the area tool, it then gives you how many cubic feet. Don't use that too often inside of buildings, but on some of the exterior work, you could maybe find an instance where with a concrete takeoff or something, you're adding some depth to a takeoff. Count is something that I use quite often. It's a very easy tool. It's instead of physically counting them and forgetting where you're at, when you're doing a count, you can just click, click, click away as many as you want. Say you're counting doors, you can do that. When you get done, you just hit escape. And then if you look at your markups list, you can see you've got 9 count, or you can come over here to your settings or to your measurements. And you should be able to see, settings. And you can see that your quantity is 9.
Hey, Sam, real quick.
And yeah.
For the count tool, is there a way to have your count span multiple pages?
There is. And I think you should be able to, if you're in the same document, you should be able to just go to the next sheet and then continue that. So if you're still in the tool from before, you can click to the next sheet and then continue the count. And then when you look at this, how I have this set up in my markups list, it's going to give me the page label on page 1. I had 2 of them. On page 2, I had 3 of them. And then page 3, I had 1 of them.
Okay, cool.
And if you ever get to a spot where you've counted what you thought was just about all of them, and you realize that you missed one, you can, if you click on it, right click, you can resume count. So then you can pick up right where you left off and finish off your door count.
And Sam, can you also show back where you had on the settings? There's, say you want to use check marks or some other tool, or shape to do different types of doors or windows or whatever.
Yeah, so I was using just kind of, and it's probably not even default. It's probably just whatever I had setting as last. But yeah, Christy's right. You've got all of these different options for all your different tools. So for the count, you can use a check mark, triangle, square, diamond, circle. You could also create a custom tool if you really wanted to for your count, and that would be as part of your toolbox. So you could do different things there. And then scale, I could make them bigger if I wanted. I could make them smaller. And then another kind of what I find is useful is the opacity of some of these. So if I put this count, say I'm counting the amount of walls that I have to paint with this PNT 5A, which is our paint 5A, and I put the count right over it and can't see it anymore, then opacity, if I adjust this down to like say a 30, and I can still see that I've got the count, but also see what it's for. So all of these tools kind of, well, let me kind of do the last one here, these polygon cutouts. So if you have an area, and let me do something that actually makes sense here. So I'm going to take an area of carpet right here, right? And I've got this carpet 2, And then inside these offices, I see, okay, this is actually carpet 3. So I want to take that quantity out. I can actually use the polygon cutout tool and go and take that area out of my quantity measurement. So now this area inside isn't counted to the total. And what you got to be careful of here is once you do take a cutout, you can fill this in, but sometimes it's a little finicky on exactly what you can fill it in with. So like right now I could fill this in with something else, but I couldn't fill it in with multiple things as far as I know. So like if I wanted to do one of each of these rooms, I couldn't do that with this cutout because it's one singular cutout that's going to be filled with one thing. So those are all the tools kind of in synopsis and what they do. And one of the kind of, that we kind of alluded to with the measurements or with the count is all of these different tools have a million different settings that you can make them appear however you want to. So you can change your dimension tool or your length tool. You can change the opacity of it, the color, how thick the line is. You can have it show the caption, which would be, so if I'm kind of looking at that, I'm going to do this. And then if I click on that and say I don't want to see the caption on it, like I can do that. And sometimes this helps just clean things up. Like if I know that what this red line means and I don't need to see the caption for each individual one, I can turn that off. The data still lives down here. So I still know down here that this is a 17-foot, 3 1/4 inch line, but I just don't need to see it on my drawing because before you know it, you're going to have all of your different lines crossing over each other, and it's going to be a box of text instead of the actual dimension tool that you want to see. So I'm going to turn the caption back on for now, but just it's useful to know that you can do that.
So Sam, just a comment on that polygon cutout tool. Say for example, and I think this is where you would use this, or could use this, is say you want to take out like you've got exterior siding on the side of your building and you've got brick, if you went to the elevation plan and took off that siding and then cut out the windows and doors, you could get that dimension for the brick or the siding, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Instead of having to trace all the way around it and do that, that's a great use of that tool is your exterior. And then you could fill that with a fill that is your window. So then you could have a square footage of your brick with a square footage of your window. But where you struggle is like, say you had oh gosh, I'm trying to think of an example of this. If there were two different, say you had a metal panel and you had a stucco and your window within that opening, you couldn't differentiate between the stucco and the window in the opening if you do that cutout. It would just be the one tool.
I see.
So, and if you do end up in a situation like that, you would have to just trace all the way around with with your area tool. So, all right, that is kind of a run through of all the tools. And now we're going to get into actually taking some of these measurements and getting them into a format that makes sense and is usable. So one of the most important things, if you noticed when I was down here, I had subject and label. So for me, that's going to help me identify everything that I'm going to be taking off, because what I don't want to do is do a takeoff of each item individually on a sheet or have different sheets for different items. I want all of them to kind of be living on the same sheet and be identifiable. So if you look at any of your tools, you can see up here, if you go to setting or to properties, you've got subject and label. So how I typically treat this is, and I'm going to use, for this one, I'm going to use kind of this section right here. And I'm going to do a takeoff of all of the flooring in this section along with base. And then I'm going to also do some like 10-foot exterior or interior walls, which all of these walls right here are glass walls. And then everything else is framed. So I'm going to start with my carpet. So right here identified is carpet number 3. And I notice I look through, all of these rooms are going to be carpet number 3. So I'm going to come over here to my area tool. I'm going to start by getting my settings right. So in the subject, I'm going to have my subject as flooring. All right, so that's going to be my big picture overarching title for all of my flooring is going to be subject flooring. And then label, I'm going to label them all individually. So I'm going to start with my carpet 3 in the label. And then I can start taking my measurements. So these are pretty square rooms. So I'm going to click and drag from corner to corner. And you can see right here, carpet 3 at 131 square feet. And then that populates down below. And I'm going to continue to do that same thing for these 4 rooms. Again, all fairly square. So I'm going to be as precise as I can. If you wanted to, if you see this little notch in this, I would say that if you're doing an estimate for a project, this is going to be insignificant. But if you wanted to capture that, you could do it by, instead of just clicking and dragging, you could click, 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 capture that square, and then I'm going to close it off with enter. And then someone got something? Yeah.
No, there's no questions so far. Sam.
Okay, sorry, I must have heard something. So anyway, this room, I'm going to finish it off by just doing a square there. And I capture a little bit there, but I'm not concerned about that as a overall. So now you see kind of all of this. I've got flooring labeled, the square footages with the overall square footage, and then my label, which is all the carpet 3. So now I'm going to come, I'm not going to do this full takeoff because this carpet 2, as you can see, is labeled, kind of comes all the way around and does a bunch of weird shapes here. But just to keep it simple and just to show kind of the different kinds of carpet, I'm going to come here, do carpet 2. I'm going to change the label. And this is important because before you kind of move from one measurement to another, you want to make sure that you're correctly labeling it. And then the color, I'm going to change this to green. And then I'm going to change this back to whatever it was. I'm going to come down to the bottom and use the set as default. So now my default when I go to use this tool is going to be carpet 2. So I'm going to do just a quick measurement for carpet 2. And a trace around this room. Set it off here. And I come back to there, so you can see this is labeled as carpet 2. So it still shows up in my subject of flooring, which is what I wanted, but now has a different label. And this will make it so that when you export it, you can differentiate between all of these. How this is sorted right now is by the page label. If you want, you can switch it to label of the markup. So now it differentiates between the carpet 2 and carpet 3. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to do is I've got my couple different carpets. I want to get how much base I'm going to need in these rooms. So I'm going to use the poly length. And the reason I'm not using perimeter in these rooms is because of this glass wall. here. With the glass wall, it's not going to have any base on it, so it's just a 3-sided room with base. If this were 4-sided, you could use perimeter, or you could actually get the perimeter value from this one. I think that there's, I can show you guys how to do that if you're interested, but there's another tool that you can add onto here that would take the perimeter of this rectangle or square that we just made. But for now, in order to get the base, I'm going to go to my poly length. I've already got my subject set as wall base. And you could put this as flooring if you wanted to, but I'm going to keep it as the wall base, and the label is this WBS1. So I'm going to come to this room and I just trace around real quick, hit enter to close it. And so on this one, if you wanted to get tricky with that little column, you could do that. And then kind of continue. And I'm just going to do these rooms. I'm not going to pick up this other area, but you can see now we've got the wall base lineal footages accounted for down below. And then the last one that I'll do is just to get a dimension for this glass wall. So I'm going to take the length tool, and my subject, I've got glass, and I've got a 10-foot interior glass wall. So I'm going to click the two points for these 4 rooms. There you go. And now it's all, again, will all show up down here separated by all of the different line items. So any questions so far on kind of quantities, how you get them, kind of what I'm trying to do here by separating out all of these and making sure that they're labeled properly? Okay. So with that, eventually I'm going to export this into Excel so that it's a little bit more maneuverable and I can start applying some dollar values to it, which can be done in Bluebeam as well, but I find it kind of cumbersome and kind of less maneuverable than if you were to just export your items to Excel and work with them there. But for this, just before we kind of go out of Bluebeam and into Excel and export all of these, there is a tool here too where you can select all of these and create a legend so that you know how much you have of each individual item. So as I look here on my legend, I can see, well, it's actually not quite right here because I've got 2 different floorings that are just labeled as flooring. So in order to edit your legend, you can come over here to your properties and you can edit all the different columns that are showing up there. So instead of my it being the subject that's being shown, I would rather have it be the label that is being shown. So I'm going to come over here to label, and I'm going to take the subject off because I don't really quite care about that. Or description is what they're calling it in this one. And then I'm going to hit OK. And now I've got my quantities as carpet 2, carpet 3, wall base. I'm not quite sure why these are showing up as 2 different interior glass walls. Yeah, I'm going to have to look at that as why they're showing up. They should all be showing up as 1 interior glass wall because I have it labeled exactly the same. But that's kind of the idea, is that you can modify this legend however you want to, and it provides you with some useful information. And you can always adjust to, if you don't like that it shows quantity and then label, if you want the label to the left side, you can edit the columns so that they're moved in the right order by clicking on it, and then moving it up. So now the label will be on the left and so on. So before we get out of this, I'm going to do do what Carrie was talking about earlier and look for specific items that we could do a quantity takeoff of through a kind of the recognition or the search tool. So I'm going to open up the search tool again. I just hit Control F to bring this up, but it's also down here. I'm going to go to Get Rectangle. And for this one, I'm going to want to find all of the AWV1 on this project. So I come here, I click, kind of select this area, and then I hit search. And depending on the settings and the sensitivity that you put on there, it's going to, if it's highly sensitive, it's going to only pick up exactly what's in this box. So it's going to look at all of these gray lines that are coming through here and pick up only exactly what I just selected. If it is less sensitive, it's going to pick up anything that looks somewhat like it. So as you kind of scroll through and see, you have AWV1, you've got FWP4. I don't want all of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the ones that I do want, and that you can kind of see them here. So I want this one, that one, that one, and kind of continue to go down. And then once you've got all of them selected, you can come up to the top, go back up to the top, and then this hyperlink or this lightning bolt, you can apply a count. So I'm going to apply the count as a red triangle. So now there's a red triangle on all of those. And again, the settings are to whatever I defaulted to last. So we'll find out what this measurement is. It's just called a count measurement. So I'm going to select all of these and then change the settings so that it shows subject, which will be wall covering, and then label, which will be AWV1.
Hey, Sam, real quick.
So now
Back to the sensitivity of the search tool.
Yeah.
Which is it left or right it's the most sensitive?
That's a great question. Let me see here. So I think right is more sensitive, left is less sensitive.
Okay.
And I have it fairly low on the sensitivity scale. That's why it's bringing up all of the FWP4s and all of that, and the AWV4s. So, but I think if you turn it all the way up, I'm probably going to end up with a search that comes back with potentially one search for one item.
Oh yeah, looks like it, huh?
Yeah, it's being a lot more specific in what it's looking for. So it's kind of one of those things, the search tool, especially for an instance like this. So like if you can see, this one only found 2, whereas previously I found a ton more. So the search tool is kind of something that is useful, but you're still going to want to double check in this instance that like, okay, that is in fact all of them. It helps to kind of, like, I don't need to look at these ones anymore. I know that they're AWB1s, but you still kind of want to double check it because it's good, but it's not perfect. And the last thing you'd want to do is rely on it and miss by like 5 or 6 spots or something, especially with this, because it's like this. So you guys know the AWV1 is like a nice wood panel that they put on this wall. So it'd be a pretty expensive miss if I missed 6 or 7 of these locations. All right, so now I've got all of my markups, and let's pretend like I did this whole building here, and we've got all of the carpets selected, we've got square footages, we've got all of the base, we've got everything that we wanted to take off done. Now I want to move it over into a program that's going to be a little bit more maneuverable. I know we just as of today, I actually did a training on a new estimating software that we're going to be using called ProEst. But in order to get a lot of the quantities into a usable format, I will typically export them to Excel. And the way that we do that, again, this is another reason why this layout is so important to me, is when I export, I'm going to export a CSV summary. Right, and you can adjust your columns here, but I've already got them set up how I want, so I'm not gonna worry about that. And then I'm going to, most of these others are set up how I want them to, and they're rather default. So I'm gonna hit OK. It exports my items into an Excel, and now I can maneuver this Excel how I want to in order to get the quantities that I'm looking for. So I'll select all of this. I'll go to data, filter, so that I can apply filters on the top. And if I'm looking for just my AWV1, I can do that and get however many, whatever the quantity is for these guys. So sum of 7 of them here. And then this is just a little bit more exportable or maneuverable to some of our estimating softwares and programs. And once you kind of get into this with your quantity takeoffs, you'll have a format that really works for you. And I'd say that everybody's format is a little bit different, even within our company. I mean, I'd say every company's format is probably going to be different, but the gist of getting this information into something that's palatable and can be transferred somewhere else is, I think, the most important part. So I guess this is kind of the end state of what you want to get from Bluebeam. One of the other items that's kind of cool with Bluebeam that I think is underutilized, but again, you have to have things set up just right in order for this to work, is I've got this takeoff, and say that I've got a pre-filled form that I use with my company. My company's got flooring. Say it could be, would probably be hundreds of lines long, but for this instance, I'm just going to use this one. So I've got my carpet number 3, and I want to get the quantity from Bluebeam. One way to do that is what I just showed you, and come in here, find this export, get my carpet number 3, and say, okay, I'm going to take this, and then I look down here just for the sum. So, okay, 582.19 square feet of carpet number 3. And I go over into my estimate, and I already forgot the number, but I think it was about that, $582.19, or 582 square feet. And then these are just some dummy numbers that I threw in to get an estimate. But at $9 a square foot gives me $52.39 for the estimate. All right. Real quick, so I got the question on here about how we calculate in decimal feet instead of feet inches. So just to clarify on the question, are you saying from this point here where it's feet inches, and then when you look at the Excel, it's in decimal feet?
Yes.
So that automatically does it. So Excel is not great at representing feet inches. So it transfers everything. So when you export it, you'll see it in decimals.
Okay, so what I did was I had an XML file of the feet and inches. So I had to manually convert them into decimals, like divide by 12 and everything.
Interesting. When you exported, so you had something that looked like this, and then when you went to export, let me see here. You exported into XML. Let me see if there's a.
Now you have to open a new Excel and open the XML file over there.
Okay. I'm not sure why that was, and it kept it as the feet inches for you.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that you exported to XML instead of like a CSV?
I just went with XML.
Okay. Yeah, if you go, I mean, it's just I'm not sure why it did it in XML, to be honest. But I've found that pretty much every time that I export something as a CSV, it takes it and converts it into a decimal.
Okay. And is
So
there
that
any
it can do
way
the math.
that on this Bluebeam sheet, while calculating the dimensions, let's say instead of 6 feet 6 inches, I need it to be 6.5 feet?
Yes, so there is, and let me see if I can remember how to do that. So instead, forgive me on this one, I hardly ever work in the decimals in Bluebeam, but let me see here. So 30
You have
feet.
to select the markup, Sam.
Do you?
Yeah.
Thank you. And
You
we're
change the
looking
length
at,
down there at the bottom instead of foot inches.
there we go. Thank you. Inches or.
Yeah, it doesn't give you.
No, I think so.
and
If,
then
if you go
151.
if you go just the feet, it will give you in decimal feet.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
Yep, so 12.62, or if you go inches or whatever it may be, so foot inches. Yeah.
I think the only
So
time that you
that's-
would probably utilize that would be on a civil drawing, because they
Yeah.
actually work in decimals. Everybody else works in foot inches.
Yep. But I think, yeah, one of the, I guess, kind of important things though is even if you were to do this takeoff, it is adjustable if you
Yeah.
needed to. So it's, as long as you're taking measurements from one spot to another visually, you can always change how those read out at a later date in here if it's not reading out quite right. So sorry, I know I didn't answer your XML question, but hopefully with the, I mean, if you try it with the CSV, hopefully all of that will convert from the foot inches into just regular feet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So this is one way. You're gonna, I mean, you export it into a CSV, you get all of your quantities and you put them into a separate Excel or different program. Another cool tool that you can use, and it's an add-on with Bluebeam into Excel, is the quantity linking. So for instance, this carpet 3 here, I'm going to quantity link, and I'm going to add from my desktop here. I'm going to add my architectural finish plans, which is the sheet that I was just working on. And then I can actually go in and find my carpet 3, hit OK, and then it automatically brings it in from that Excel or from that Bluebeam. So now if I go to Bluebeam, and I'll kind of try to split screen here on my screens. So now I'm going to, what is my area set to? So if for whatever reason, this is kind of just another, as I go through, I did carpet 2, but now I want to jump back to carpet 3. So I'm going to click on carpet 3 and I'm going to set as default. So now the next tool that I use is going to be the for the carpet 3. So now I'm going to go into my area and I'm going to select another room. right? So I added 125 and this jumped in my Excel from 500 and something to 708. So you could do that with pretty much everything as long as you've got your labeling correct. You could quantity link all of this to your Bluebeam takeoff, and it would continue to update as you're updating your Bluebeam. So I guess with that, I mean, that's kind of the gist of what we would be doing with the quantity takeoff. I'd say the most important parts, as I kind of discussed in the beginning, is making sure that you've got your nomenclature and your naming right. Because if you, for whatever reason, get off on your subject and label, it creates a mess to try to figure out what you've done and rechange individual items one by one. So making sure that you've got those labeled correctly as you're doing these, making sure you've got your scale right. And yeah, other than that, quantity takeoffs are something that is, it's only as good as kind of the time that you spend doing it. It can be tedious sometimes trying to count everything and make sure that you've got everything captured. But if you spend the time to actually do it and make sure that things are labeled right, you end up with a lot of good data that can be exported, it can be linked, it can be applied into different aspects of your estimate. And yeah, it's a very, very useful tool to not only do estimates, but also to check estimates and make sure that subcontractors are giving you quantities and numbers that are accurate.
Sam, I have a question.
Yeah.
And I know you're not an estimator, but maybe you and Carrie have some suggestions on things that you've seen that have been done well. But there's a number of our students that are here that are on competition teams, and typically, you know, if I were teaching, which I sometimes teach our CM 110 class, which is our estimating class, in terms of organizing, you know, quantity takeoffs of various different scopes of work, a lot of times what I would suggest is, like, your right side, you've got your Excel spreadsheet, and so your sheet tabs down there at the bottom, you know, I would have like a summary sheet, and then, like, you know, take off all your flooring, or take off all your you know, bathroom fixtures, or, you know, and have that roll up into your summary sheet. Have you guys seen it done any differently, or have any suggestions on how to organize your quantity takeoffs?
No, I guess one of the things too, speaking from a general contractor's standpoint, is that a lot of times when we're doing these large, let me just put it this way, we don't spend as much time doing full quantity takeoffs sometimes as I sometimes imagined we would, you know, because we've got a lot of subcontractors number, and a lot of times it's a check for us to make sure that we've got that. But what I have seen done is similar to how you've got it described, Christy, is either a bunch of different tabs at the bottom with all of the different types of material that you're going to have in each tab, usually split by like CSI division. So we are typically still using the 16 CSI division, even though I think it's outdated. But I'd say most of our estimates fall into that 16 division at this point. But then, yeah, that would all kind of roll up into one, or just having everything collapsible within one spreadsheet so that you've got everything living in the same spot and can be expanded as needed.
And so would you say that the sheets, you've seen it where the sheet numbers at the bottom, you've got like a estimate summary, and then each division is set up by sheet number, like division 1, division 2, you know, or is it broken down even further?
I would say mostly what we would see where we would do a deeper dive of takeoff is in doing budgets for clients, so they
Uh-huh.
might come with a set of plans that looks like this and just say, okay, assume two different, like the offices would be a carpet, like some kind of Shaw carpet, or the common area would be some type of wood plank, and we would get a price, like a budgetary number for square foot from a sub on a generic type of plank or something like that, and we would kind of put those budgetary numbers to it, not to the level of detail of doing all kinds of different takeoffs. And then yeah, it would be mostly by CSI division, like 1/16. So like flooring might be, we'd probably break that down a little bit, like carpet might be, assume, budget number of $20,000 for carpet, and then $50,000 for plank or something like that.
Mhm.
For a total flooring budget of like 70,000. And then as the drawings develop, then we would start sending it out to subs to bid those specific products, and then our numbers would true up a little bit more along that line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer
Okay.
your question?
But yeah. Yeah, I would say for the quantity takeoff in Excel, if you're going to be doing a in-depth takeoff of items like that, having some sort of, you're not going to want to, well, I find most often you don't need to provide all of the backup to the client. You just need to have it there in case they ask questions, right?
Mhm.
So your summary tab is going to be your most important. It's going to be where all of the work that you've done and all of those other tabs gets conveyed concisely, and then having those others formatted. So again, we use divisions 1 through 16. So I mean, in the division 9 tab, you could have it under certain headings with different codes for them if you wanted. I think we usually start our division 9 at drywall and go through the flooring, through paint, through tile, all the different division 9 finishes.
But
that
separate
we
them
would be-
out
we doing a takeoff.
per the CSI code for each of those items, like highlight it
Yep.
with a title under it. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's how
So
I've
that-
taught it. We're just, I know our commercial team has been asking a lot of like, how should we organize things, and so that's where the question was coming, and that's how I had suggested to do it.
Yeah.
The other question that I have, and maybe those of you that are on the commercial team can jump in here too, because it might trigger some questions from you, because I'm sure, Sam, you've experienced this. One of the things that we have to deal with the ASC Reno problem is they'll ask a question. I think it's like an RFI question, right, you guys? And then they, you'll have to ask questions and then provide the backup, like say for, something that changed on the plans or whatever, and do a quantity takeoff. And then maybe also do a TIA, a time impact analysis on it. And so say you have an RFI that you have to do a quantity takeoff on and a cost estimate. What are some recommendations on how to organize how you respond to that so that you get that RFI through and you get a good answer back?
So in this instance, you're asking the RFI of I don't remember how the commercial team is set up, but you're asking it of the owner or the architect?
Right.
And-
Yeah. So say maybe if it's the owner or the architect, you see something on the plans that's missing, or, that could be one scenario where you write a great RFI, and you provide the backup that, to try and get that answer. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that, an RFI came through and you get an answer, and they ask you to provide the data to back up,
your cost and time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So how I would tend to do that, or think that you would do that, is have a template set up for a quicker cost estimate than like a full building estimate,
Uh-huh.
but that still covers those same divisions that you're going to be looking for, So if it's a division 9 or whatever, And then when you're doing your quantity takeoff, still put it into those buckets and then be able to provide a similar backup that you would for your full quantity. So honestly, if you wanted to, you could use the same template that you use for a full format estimate and just have it so that you can shrink it down to just the items that are being impacted by that RFI.
I see. So
Yeah.
delete it. So basically delete out the tabs that you're not using and then use the summary sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, use the summary sheet for your kind of backup, or for your, that's going to be, the summary sheet's going to be what you send and say, hey, it's going to be $47,000, 242 cents here. And if you wanted to, on that summary sheet, include the like 16 divisions that you're pulling from or whatever. So that 47,000, 7,000 of it's coming from division 16 and 40 of it's coming from division 9.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then have that backup with all of your other tabs if they request it, or if it's needed to be provided.
And
on all those other tabs, you would,
that goes along with that too, right? So it's saying, RFI response, number one includes, an additional, 800 lineal feet of, this wall type, drywall, XYZ, so much board feet, or, things like that too.
So it's best not to just give the numbers, but also give a narrative of what your thought process is, it sounds like.
Yeah. Because usually an RFI response is usually related to something specific. It's not like the RFI response is going to be add, a whole new building,
Right.
Yeah.
So it's going to be something related to a very particular question that's missing interpretation. So like if in this instance, right, like there might be 2 rooms that are missing a flooring designation, right? So if it's if it's CP1 was assumed, but they clarified it as CP3, which is a much more expensive product, say it's an increase of this. This is what the base product was. This is what the increase is. The delta is what's owed. So if you get an RFI that's so generic that that's missing the whole entire job, then
you get a problem.
There's gonna be a lot more RFIs coming.
So when we do that at querying, so we get an RFI back that has some change that is going to be cost driven. Typically, we will issue the owner PCO, or potential change order, right? Which is basically kind of what you're talking about, where we're telling them like, hey, based off of per the response to RFI 41, like this change, this change, this change. And then how we've got it set up is our different, based off of our bill, right? All of our bill has a bunch of different contract items, which I'd say majority of the time is per our CSI divisions. So then we tell them kind of how each CSI division is going to be impacted, and then we provide all the backup behind that to say like, division 9 changed because you changed the flooring in these 4 rooms for that $47 a square foot increase, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times at that point, we already have trades under contract, so they can actually give us a cost proposal to add that material, and we would add that backup in there too, so they can see the exact numbers. So,
but if you're in a Reno competition and you've got a square footage and a price, a number,
exactly.
I mean that would be your backup.
Yeah, exactly.
I see.
So like doing a combination of this markup showing what added, and then going in and showing what square footage and lineal footage of wall base and carpet and things like that, so they can easily correlate the two. Then that's your backup.
I see. And do you guys that are on the competition team have any questions? Because I know we've got some problem statements that are related to the questions I'm asking. Can you guys think of anything else that you want to know?
No, probably not from my end. I'm pretty good with. It's very clear to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably just like, okay, how do you get better at reading plans? Because like some of the plans, I'm like, how do I find this information? For example, like it says like the floor, like go to that. I don't know how to like explain it, but some of the drawings are very hard to understand. How do you like navigate through that?
Years of experience.
Yeah. I would,
because nobody
I
draws
would
it all
say
the same way. So
yeah.
I would say big picture wise though, if you're looking for something specific in a drawing set, understanding, well, depending on obviously which drawings you're looking at, but in architecturals, typically a lot of architects will sequence their drawings in a similar way, where you've got your large format floor plans in the beginning, and then you've got some of your exterior details, and then you start to drill into your other details. But what I would say is, if you're looking for something specific, don't ever start in the detail sheets. Start with your big picture, large format drawings and see if you can pinpoint where on those drawings it is, because a lot of times you may get lucky and there may be a detail reference that then takes you to that specific detail. So I always, when I'm looking for something and I don't know where I'm going to be looking, I start big and then go small rather than looking for a specific detail.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you have
that's
to be
helpful.
careful. A lot of times they might say similar or typical, and that detail might be called out in somewhere completely different, but it applies to the whole entire project, in that similar condition. So it takes time. Every plan set is, like Sam said, they're usually pretty organized, similar ways, but they're not always similar by any means. So like these floor, like finish plan boxes, this setup is different than what I see on my job right now. And it was different on the one I saw before that and the one before that. Everybody sort of designs and draws it a little bit differently, but it just takes time. Once you figure it out, it becomes easier and you just kind of get through it. So it's almost like finding like, where's Waldo a lot of the time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you might have to go through like
Waldo's
7 or
there
8
somewhere.
pages before you find what you're looking for. It might take you to a detail, or, take you to a floor plan, to a section, which might take you to another section or elevation that takes you to a certain detail, which takes you to another detail, so it does happen.
Well, another example too would be like, say you have floor finishes or you have openings, you could go and look at a floor plan and it just be so complicated. But then you go to the opening schedule, where your doors and windows are, your flooring is, and it's all listed out there. And you really need both of those, to do your takeoff.
Yeah. Pete, question for you in Reno. Do you guys, when you get the drawing set, do you batch link them?
Do I what?
Do you guys link the drawing set when you get them?
Yes, we try to, but like the one that I am working on right now is kind of weird. I don't know how to, like, let me show you this. Let me share my screen real quick, and then I can show you exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, he's sharing too. I just wanted to let you guys know we're about 10 till 9 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we'll probably have to start winding this down. Yeah, we could ask lots of questions. We might even ask you more questions, Sam. Call you up and ask you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I remember Reno. It was fun.
Mhm.
Did you do commercial?
No, I didn't. I competed 3 times. The first one I did was lead. It was called lead at the time. I think it's sustainability now. I did heavy civil, and then I did mixed use.
Okay.
Yeah, but for it's kind of weird to me. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen something like this before. Why don't you just call out a section, just a number, and you have to go through like the plans to the details to see it.
Go to SC2 Raleigh and then looking for number 307 probably.
I think SC2 is a call out for one of these things here. I think SC2, yeah,
Is
it's
this a
just a
slab
steel
deck
column.
plan? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh goodness. Yeah.
yeah. So you have to like
This
go
one's
through
good. This one.
these
Yeah.
things, and it's just a headache. But
Yep.
so
Yeah,
basically,
that is unfortunate, because what I was gonna say is, like, if you could like link all of your drawings like first thing when you get them, it makes navigating them much quicker.
mhm.
But if you run up against something like this where they've got a odd, and that looked like it was the structural drawings that had kind of the
Yeah.
odd references in there, you're going to be, I'm not going to say out of luck, but in the time frame that you have to do it, it's going to be difficult to get those to link properly.
Yeah, see, there you go. You're looking for that detail 307 on SC2. Yeah.
and it doesn't even reference a sheet.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I know how to do like the batch link, but because
Yeah.
it doesn't have that like sheet, for example, if they just say 307 and S4.1,
S4.1.
yeah, and I
pick
could
up
do
the
the batch link.
S4.1 and you could go to there. Yeah.
Yeah, but because they're doing this, I'm like, damn, really? How to do that?
Yeah. I'll be honest, Keith, I haven't seen a drawing that has done that before, that doesn't have a sheet that goes along with it.
Yeah.
But again, like we were saying, every designer kind of does it differently. So
Yep.
it's never the
Yeah.
same.
Just send an RFI and ask them if they could redo their drawings.
Well, so
Or four.
you
I
know,
don't think we could do
and
that.
I think one thing to
Don't do
note
that,
maybe
Keith.
is you could
Don't do
probably,
it.
you might on the side, you might under the notes sections on some of those sheets, they might show that call out type, and it might say reference sheet, you know, SC4 to, you know, all those kind of other sheets. So it might direct you straight to those sheets to find those call outs.
Okay.
And yeah, that is
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
yeah, no, it can. I mean, honestly, like I'll tell you a lot of times, and Sam could probably say we might get a set of drawings, and it takes us a good couple months before we really familiarize ourselves on how we need to tab it and cycle through it. And I'm guilty of still doing paper drawings. I love Bluebeam, but like I like being able to have like 5 fingers and sets and just being able to flip through to all kinds of different things personally. So I always get on my own paper set. So
Yeah, it's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
what is money? What is money, Carrie?
hey, it's all good.
Is Julian, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Did you learn a few things tonight?
Yeah, I actually have one question. Since we were
Yeah.
speaking about plan change orders, so somebody who works for the developer, we like to have the least amount of change orders.
Yep.
We prefer
Me
to
too.
have final price when we execute our contract. So my question to you guys is, how do you guys approach these plans that you guys review, and kind of you guys go through them together as a group, or how do you guys attack that to avoid the least amount of change orders?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we like to do is get involved early and often. And
Mhm.
you're going to have to forgive me, Julian, for not being as in the loop as I should be on the Crossroads project, and kind of where we're at with that one as far as kind of the delivery method. But oftentimes with, I mean, especially for Founders Plaza with a design build project, we were involved from day one. And we had project managers, myself included, was involved looking at drawing sets, coordinating with architects, structural engineers, civil engineers. We brought on all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades, got them involved early on too. So I'd say it kind of extends beyond just querying, looking at the drawings, and also a lot of our trade partners looking at the drawings and trying to identify as much early on as we can, that kind of limits that down the road. And I know that we oftentimes enlist superintendents who may not be intimately involved with the job, but have a wealth of knowledge as far as constructability goes, to come in early and do constructability reviews to make sure that these details are actually doable, you know, and we're not going to get hit down the road with a change order because we have to build something slightly different than the drawings show because we just physically couldn't do it. So
Yep.
a kind of long answer, but getting involved early and having as many different eyes on it early while we're kind of still have the ability to influence before we lock in any final prices or anything is kind of how we go about doing it. Carrie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, I'm smiling because I think that's all a really good answer. I mean, the way I kind of look at it is if you remove the gray area that's found in your drawings, then you're going to have a solid set of drawings to work off of, right? So if you're finding yourselves that your drawings or the drawings that you're getting from designers are missing a lot of information on them just generically, then we're going to have to guess at what that information is, and it gets qualified. And then when it comes out that you actually really like Sherwin-Williams paint and refuse anything else, and we do PPG as our bid, and there's a cost difference between the two. It's because there's nothing saying that it need to be Sherwin-Williams, so just as an example, so if you remove that gray area in the design development, then you get a more solid number because we have something more specific to bid off of, right? So if you don't know what kind of flooring you want and you want to say, let's just assume $5 a square foot, and then your designer chooses something that's $50 a square foot, that $45 difference is going to come somewhere, so it really, the more information and clarity that we have in the design, the better off those numbers are going to be. That's just pretty.
Yep, I agree. And the way it works with is usually RH community builders, they kind of just purchase old worn down motels, and when you do a rehab on units like that, there's no way.
Yeah. I like you. As soon as you open that wall, all of a sudden everything's got to come up to date, right? So
Yep.
I mean, and even in those instances, you're designing off of somebody else's as built 20, 30 years ago, right? So now you're coming into a whole nother situation where that steel, which we rented this job on a Pontiac job, the steel was not in the same place that it was on the as built. So it had a whole major redesign had to happen with that. So again, as soon as you start removing that gray area, everything else just becomes clear, so yeah. But we as much as everyone thinks contractors like change orders, we really don't, because it's a lot of time and hassle for us to put them together. You know what I mean? So like, if I can go through a job without a single change order, I'm happy, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're on board
with you.
So
That's all we want.
It's a lot of work for sure.
It's so much work. It's so much
Yes.
time, and it's headache.
And you put that on a public job, you're in deep trouble because they take forever.
Let's not even talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my life right now. So I'm just
Right.
again, it's those gray areas. It's hard,
Right.
So it's nobody likes talking about money. It's never
No.
fun.
No.
So,
Well, we really appreciate you guys. This was a very fruitful session, and I learned a few new things, and hopefully our students learned a few new things, and
Good.
Julian too. And Julian, you're welcome back anytime. We have these on a regular basis every semester, and so if you want to, I'm going to type my name in the chat here, but you can look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me, and you'll see the invites all the time that way.
Awesome. I'm on the phone, so I can't see your name.
Oh, it's I'll tell you, it's Christy Banks, CHRSTI, and then BANKS. And if you just connect with me on LinkedIn, I always send them out through my personal LinkedIn, as well as our Bluebeam user group. And so we always have great, speakers like this. So tell your friends, colleagues to come join us. We learn a lot in here. So
it might even be nice to get a developer's perspective in Bluebeam.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's what she's going to rope you into, Julian. I hope you realize.
I know. I was gonna say this is our. You don't know what you're getting into. You'll be doing these speaking opportunities too. Well, thanks you guys. It was really great, and we learned a lot, and we might be calling you, especially on the commercial team there, Sam, and see if we have some questions that we need answered for sure. So we really appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm more than happy. Thank you guys for having me.
Totally.
Do you guys have anything else, or let's wind this down for tonight? And
let Sam go home. It looks like he's still in the office.
I know you need to go home, Sam. Thanks so much, really. Thank you.
You running
so
the
much.
elevator night shift right now? So
Yeah. No elevator night shift. That was over the weekend, Carrie.
Oh, okay. You guys are supposed to be Thanksgiving holiday, right? Isn't that where yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're pushing for. Yeah.
So Sam and those guys are doing a great job out there. So it's
it sounds like a wonderful job. Well, you guys
Yeah,
all
it's-
have a
it's
good
great.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You too.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll connect with everybody soon for sure.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay,
All right.
thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, everybody.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Sounds good.
Bye.
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 Thank you.